Welcome to another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast, brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. I'm Dr. Bill Kanasky. My guest today, great friend, one of my favorite people in the world, Holly Howanitz from Tyson Mendes in Jacksonville, Florida. Holly, what's shaking?
Oh, just getting ready to do an afternoon meeting right after this. I was supposed to be in trial next week, but I got a little bit of free time, so I'm filling it with other things.
Always welcome on the podcast. You and I have been back and forth a lot lately. Let's just jump right into a couple rants. I mean that's part of this podcast. If you don't like it, sorry. It's part of what we do here. Because if we just talk about litigation science the entire time, it put everybody to sleep. What is wrong with people on LinkedIn? Listen. I mean, you try to post something, right? You try to post something that's something of value, or you share something, right? And you're trying to do something good. And then you get 115 replies with 88 of them either attacking you or saying things that are ridiculous. A lot of trolls out there, Holly.
I always find that you kind of know you've done a good post, like when you get a troll or two, because it means it's a topic that is worth discussing, right? So if you
Yeah.
just get only positive feedback on some of the topics regarding, business or work-life balance or something like
Yeah.
that, then you probably haven't really been truly honest with the post. So if I find that like a really thoughtful and honest post, whether it's mine or somebody else's, you get a lot of
Yeah.
positive feedback, but you're gonna get some negative feedback too.
Yeah, and some of it's just over the top, ridiculous. I mean, in some cases, it's like looking at X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, or Facebook. Sometimes LinkedIn gets that way, and one of your recent posts, which I agreed with. It's essentially what you said in your post was, you like direct answers to direct questions, whether it's in testimony, whether it's at home or whether it's at work, and it makes everybody's life a lot easier. And I know in testimony, it's a huge, like, I mean, half of my job is studying witness credibility in front of juries, and I am positive I can prove to you that jurors really appreciate direct answers. They don't like you dancing around or sugarcoating it, putting things in all this crazy context. If particularly if something factual is put in front of a witness, and the witness owns it and agrees with it, that's a direct answer, and it maintains their credibility. When witnesses start going the yeah, but let me explain, and they start yapping away, the jury doesn't like it because it really does hurt your credibility because you're evading a certain fact. And then I think in your personal life, you're just like, can you just get to it? I mean, why? Like, because time is money, money is time, and I like direct answers. But so yeah, so you post that on LinkedIn, and half of the world's legal world's flipping out and putting out a bunch of crazy opinions. You've taken it you've taken it much better than I do. I don't know how you deal with it.
Like I said, I feel like if I don't get some negative feedback, then it probably wasn't a very substantial post. I mean, the one
Yeah.
about answering a question, there were people that were like, well, that's a very narrow-minded, post that you would expect somebody to answer a question. I'm like, well, dear Mr. Commenter, have you
Yeah.
sat in a hearing with a judge where somebody's not answering the question, and then you can sort of like see the heat rising in the judge as their time is wasted? So when you get a pointed question, if you're being asked a question by a judge, you best answer it.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to come across like a politician. That's what they do, you know? You ask them about immigration and they will start pivoting over to healthcare immediately, right? I mean, they just don't. And if a witness does that or a colleague does that, or you do that in front of a judge, it's generally not a good thing. So, it's answer questions directly, right?
And sometimes it's okay if you did it. You take responsibility for it. Like
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, we've had witnesses, in rear end auto cases where, they're asked a question, we're meeting with them. Did you cause the accident? And they're like, well, what had happened was, and
Yeah.
then you're like, no, you rear-ended this person. Did your brakes, like, is there a legitimate excuse? If not, just say, yes, I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, and here's what ultimately kills your credibility, whether it be in front of a jury. or voters if you're a politician or just in everyday life, is that everybody in the room knows the answer is yes. Like everybody freaking knows, Holly. Everybody knows. And the witness or the person, whoever, dances around. It's like you can run, but you can't hide. And then 10 minutes of pivoting and running around, trying not again, run, but you can't hide. And then after 10 minutes of all this bullshit, you end up saying yes, because it's true. And you just killed your credibility because your brain went fight or flight, amygdala hijack because you don't want to say yes because maybe it doesn't look so good. But the facts are the facts are the facts, right? And in this, and whether it be deposition or trial, there's always an opportunity to explain at the right time, but it's all about timing. And you get a witness backpedaling, right? You're cross-examining a witness, and they're going, yeah, but yeah, but yeah, but I mean, you've got them. You've got them, and you're just going to keep drilling them. Whereas if they just give it up and say, yeah, that's true. Next question.
Yeah.
Like there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, if you run towards the thing you don't want to admit instead of running away from it, then you can really control it much better.
Yeah,
If you just
I was talking to a witness. My father-in-law was in Vietnam at the worst time, like 68, 69. And then after that, he was a firefighter for 30 years. This guy's got incredible stories. And I asked him, how do you do that? Right? Because your brain's telling you run away from the danger. He's like, you got to train your brain to run towards the bullets and to run towards the fire. That's how you survive, which is the exact opposite of what your brain wants to do. But I think in litigation and in testimony, particularly, if there's facts and there's things you did or you didn't do, own it, right? Own it. And
right.
it largely eliminates counterattack and further cross-examination because you're owning it. You start dancing around and trying to run away from it. They're going to just punish you. It's going to kill your credibility.
You can retrain your brain to see a threat as an opportunity, and then you
Yes.
handle pressure a lot better. It's kind of like when
Yeah.
I see a hill and I'm running, I run like a Toyota Prius, so I'm not great at hills, but instead of saying, oh, then I'm just like, oh, I get to run up that. And then you do a lot better if you see something that's
It's
daunting as an opportunity.
It's
As
all
opposed
about it's cognitive appraisal. Now, I will tell you, I run like a 50-year-old crippled man. That's that's how I run. And which is why I power walk on incline on the treadmill because I cannot do what you do. See? I'm admitting.
Yeah,
Admitting.
you answered the question.
um But you have an epic rant. You have an epic rant because I know that you run a lot. And by the way, I work on a lot of cases for municipalities in which there's accidents at crosswalks where you have pedestrians or runners, and then you got remember you got the orange. What's that guy called? It's the orange one, right? It's a solid orange person
Right.
walking, and then you have the blinking orange, right? And then you have the white. These are very dangerous intersections. What are your experiences with those?
So I think I've texted you a few times when I was like, I need to come on your podcast and talk
Yes.
about cars not stopping for pedestrians because I just almost got hit by a car. So, so first from the perspective of someone who is a frequent pedestrian, because I really hate driving. So if given the choice to walk versus
Yeah.
drive, I will walk somewhere, and I also do run outside quite a bit. I get really frustrated with cars that do not stop for pedestrians, whether it's a crosswalk, because I live in sort of the downtown area. We have, little squares where there's, very nice brick crosswalks, and there's signs that say stop for pedestrians. And we just see cars just blowing through them all the time. And they're not even apologetic about it. Or sometimes, you'll make eye contact with one as I want to cross the crosswalk.
Yeah.
And it's like they look at you like they're doing you a favor to stop. They'll kind of like slow down and come up a little bit hot and stop at the last minute. And then they look at you like it's your fault that, they have to obey the law.
It's
And
very annoying. It's very, especially when someoe's turning and you've got the white sign. It's saying you can
right.
walk. And
Yeah, the crossbar is like optional. They like breach up and kind of inch up on it.
yeah,
And
and
again,
they're in a
they
hurry.
make eye contact with you. It's like, oh, I'm doing you a favor because I didn't break the law.
Yeah,
And yeah, so
yeah.
that's rough. The other thing I really hate is if they do slow down and stop for you, and then once you've cleared, they sort of gun it, like again, like they're bitter that they had to stop for you, so they just
Sending
have
a
to
message,
accelerate.
sending a
Right,
message.
right.
They just want to let you know they're going to gas it around the corner just to
Yeah.
say you delayed my commute to work by a solid 4.5 seconds, and I'm not happy with that. That's what that's all
How
about.
dare you be out there exercising?
I know.
I am trying to drive here. And what makes it even more egregious is if it's like a minivan with the stickers on the back with all the family members that does
Yeah,
it, which is not infrequent. So it'll be somebody that clearly has kids in the car,
yeah.
and it's like you're driving like a maniac and you have kids in the car.
I bet these are non-exercisers, the people doing this. I think because honestly, I'm an exercise. I just and I'm sure when you do drive, right? You know how this works. You
Yeah.
probably yield to pedestrians because you've been in that position
Right. I
before.
am very sensitive and cognizant of crosswalks.
See,
Exactly.
see, why can't we all just follow the rules and everybody's fine? But it's just the impatience of our society. Well, please don't get run over. But I've worked on a lot of those cases. And I worked on one case that was very interesting up in Georgia, not too far from you, where they sued the city saying that the sequencing of the lights wasn't clear, right? And at certain times of the day, as people were walking, like they have the flashing one that tells you, hey, like you got 20 more seconds. In some cities, they have the countdown starts at typically
Mhm.
20 or 30. It counts it down. And they were saying that that sequencing wasn't long enough or didn't warn either the drivers or the pedestrians. And that's what caused the accident. So there is litigation over this topic. Like we're not just blowing smoke here. There's litigation over this topic.
Right. I have one right now, and I've had them before where some of the crosswalks have the button you can push to make the
Yeah.
lights flash. And there's allegations that there were like plants growing over it, so it wasn't as visible as it should have been. So then there's a dispute, like, did the pedestrian actually push the button? Did they not push the button? So there's all kinds of parties involved. But yes, it is. And I would say, like, if you are crossing the crosswalk, you cannot assume that the car is going to do
No.
the right thing.
Yeah. When I get the walk sign, the first thing I do is nothing. I, I do nothing but look, going, okay, where's the idiot? There's always one idiot. Where is it? Oh, there he goes. And then I walk. See, you
Right.
gotta, yeah, you gotta wait. So, enough of crosswalks, and let's go to cross examination of expert witnesses. So this is something obviously you do a lot of, and there's various circumstances in which you're crossing an expert witness, whether be at dep or at trial, and then you got some other unique issues here. But this seems to be this is not really something we've discussed a lot. We talked a lot about um, cross examination of fact witnesses, but not necessarily of experts. Because let's kind of talk about that, your experiences with that, the various circumstances that you find yourself in, and maybe some of the tricks of the trade, and maybe some unique circumstances where you got to be careful because maybe something can come back and bite you.
So experts are different than fact witnesses because they, give hundreds of depositions. And
Yeah,
I've had attorneys taking their first expert deposition and they come back and they're like, "Well, he wouldn't agree with me that, the accident
yeah,
didn't cause this injury and, look at all this objective data." And you kind of chuckle because I'm like, "Oh, you mean you didn't change his mind in the deposition?"
go
Oh,
figure.
terrible. So obviously you have to think about what your goals are for cross-examining an expert, whether it's at deposition or at trial. And then also you do have to be prepared for some surprises. Obviously doing your homework before the deposition is critical. A lot of times in just personal injury cases, you start to see the same experts over and over again. Like when I depose some of them, it's like, "Oh, hey, how are you today? It was nice to see you. Haven't seen you in 3 days." So you do kind of like, you could sort of get the book on them, and you have to adjust your strategy based on what you know that they've said in the past. Obviously, if they trip up, you can impeach them with prior testimony. But then really you have to sort of make a strategic decision as to when you want to drop the bomb on them too, if you've got something really good. So discovery deposition traditionally is fact finding so you can get their opinions before trial. And then if you've got some really good impeachment, a lot of times you save it for trial. When it's tricky is Sometimes the plaintiff's attorneys may know that, and they may try to convert a discovery deposition into something they're going to use for trial testimony. And then again, you have to make a judgment call as to when you want to do your, what I would call your real cross-examination on the expert.
Let's talk about that. Now, is that different state by, is that a Florida thing, or is that in any state that could happen?
So generally, a doctor deposition, you can read it. An expert deposition in Florida, we call it the any purpose rule. So a deposition of a party or an expert witness can be used for any purpose, whether it's discovery or they could read it at trial. So you always have to be cognizant that your discovery deposition could be read in front of the jury.
Interesting. So let's talk about bomb dropping. How do you, like, what goes into the decision make? Because you got your bomb, right? And I mean, you could drop the bomb in the opening drive of the game, or you could wait till the end of the fourth quarter. When you're in the red zone and there's 2 minutes left and it's opportunistic. How do you make that call? What factors go into that decision?
Well, generally speaking, if I have something that the expert doesn't know I have, let's say I've gotten something new, I've found some good literature that's completely, inconsistent with their opinion, or if I found an old deposition of theirs that's completely inconsistent with their opinion, I would not usually confront them with something really bad in the discovery deposition. I would typically save it for trial, and I would get them to go as far out on the limb, with their opinion as possible that I'm going to tear down. But again, sometimes the plaintiff's counsel will get wise. Oh, my expert has this really bad thing, and I don't want him to get hit with it. So, let's say I sent a more inexperienced attorney to do the discovery deposition. The plaintiff's counsel might then capitalize on it and say, I'm going to convert this into my trial testimony. I'm not going to risk bringing him. So I
Oh,
have
wow.
my attorneys trained, if you think it's going to be, if it's getting converted, take a break and call me so that we can
Yeah.
talk about this, or at least send me a text so that we can work out, what to do. But generally speaking, I would save it for in front of the jury. But if I think something's going to become trial testimony and I don't want to waste my opportunity, then I would then kind of flip the script and handle it in the discovery deposition.
Wow. So when you drop these bombs, what's the array of responses like? Is there like an oh shit moment by the witness, or do they tend to expect it? How do they react, and then how do you play off of that?
So sometimes they don't really know what's happening. Sometimes they don't care because they got paid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes it really kind of depends on how their attorney reacts to it too, because sometimes the attorney can make it worse. But I guess it's very variable. I had one expert last year that he said something really stupid in a deposition that I happened to have on video. So I played the clip in this other deposition of him. And so I got a clip within a clip happening on the
Oh,
video.
wow.
And when he sees it, he said, that was a spontaneous utterance. And so
A spontaneous
yeah,
utterance?
when he was confronted with his prior, really what amounted to perjury, in another case, he called it a spontaneous utterance. So I ended up settling that case for very little money after that deposition. So yeah, so the reaction's variable. Sometimes they don't notice, sometimes they don't care, but it really depends on then how you're going to weave it into your overall trial theme, and what you're going to close on based on what you got out of them.
Excellent. So when you're approaching the deposition of an expert witness, you've done your homework. How do you approach it based on whether it's a very savvy, experienced expert witness versus somebody that's either never testified before, maybe they've only done it a few times and they're pretty much green to the system.
Obviously, the green one, it's much easier because again, you can drop things on them, and then sometimes they'll just make concessions and not even really realize that they've hurt the case that they've been hired to be an expert on. So sometimes they'll just agree with you. Um, if it's a really savvy expert, they're probably going to fight you. Sometimes these experts, they should really retain your services about pivoting and how to
Oh
testify. They'll fight
God.
they'll fight you on things that's totally unnecessary.
And you
So
make like, do you make the most out of that to hurt their credibility?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, if they're fighting you on something that's just dumb, then I usually try to get them to the outer edge of that.
Yeah.
And you try to get them to not concede things, that everybody knows, because then again,
Yeah.
you can come back and use that for closing. When you're going through your list of like who testified
Yeah.
and what the overall evidence is, the further you get them out on a limb, obviously the more biased they look and the less credible they are.
Yeah, I've seen some really good cross examiners, both plaintiff and defense attorneys, that when that witness starts pivoting and going into yeah, but yeah, but yeah, but yeah, but right, they're very, I mean, just the way it's brilliant how you can reel them back in, right? And I'd like to see how you do that, because I see a lot of good attorneys go, well, that's really nice. Not the question I asked you. So let's back up and do it again, right? And there's various ways and shapes to do that, to essentially send the message of, we're not leaving this room until you say yes to this basic fact that you know it. I know, obviously, you're not going to say that, but you're sending that message of, nice try. I'm not letting you get away with that, right?
Yeah, I like to go with like the humble way to handle it. So I always tell people, I think I invented the I'm confused. So when they start doing that, I'm
I
like,
thought you would, I thought
"Ah."
you'd, oh, I thought you'd be dropping the hammer.
Well, so it depends. I mean, like I said, it depends on who they are. But sometimes, if they're pivoting, I'm like, well, I'm confused. Didn't I ask you this? Is that, and then you kind of give kind
Oh,
of the pause and you're like, well, your answer is, I'm sorry, I just don't get it. I'm going to have to ask the question again. So
you're sly. You're sly. And
yeah,
by the way, this is actually a really important point. I don't think that it's a brilliant tactic. It works. I train every witness for it. You don't see it as much as you probably should. It's highly effective, because I think most witnesses get prepared for more of the more aggressive attack, right?
right.
Yeah, did you order the code red, right? I mean, they're expecting that. And then when someone's nice to them, nice, and says, "Okay, now wait a second. Like, I'm trying to understand you, but I'm lost, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to get to the bottom. Let's back up. Let me. I tell you what. Maybe I asked a bad
Maybe I
question.
didn't ask it right. Let me
Maybe I
try
asked a
again.
bad question. Let me ask it this way." And then I think it's a lot. I think a witness is far more vulnerable doing that, and that you do get further with honey than vinegar. Is that your experience?
Yeah, and it's funny. I thought like the statute of limitations on I'm confused would have expired, because I'm like 44 now, right? So I'm not walking around like haven't been doing this. But so I really thought I'm confused would have expired like 10 years ago, but shockingly it still works. So
Yeah.
you get these experts and they're wired to think that they're smarter than you. And
Yeah.
so
Oh
like
yeah.
why wouldn't you let them? Like let them think they're smarter than you. And some of them are, but that's why you got to know who you're dealing with. And with the really good ones, you just got to get in, throw a few darts and get out, because you're not, I'm not going to outsmart a neurosurgeon in his trade. Um,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, I find that it works better with discovery depositions, and sometimes even like in front of the jury, just to be humble and let them be like, oh, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't ask that question correctly. Let me try again. Oh, your response is a little confusing. I want to make sure the jury understands what you're saying to them. So you just look like you're being courteous.
Yeah. So again, whether it be trial or deposition, maybe it's different. When you get how do you deal with the more experienced, maybe even arrogant expert witness that thinks they know it all, and really is almost like the hubris is, you could just cut it with a knife. Um, how do you deal with that? Because these are witnesses that sometimes they've testified 100 times, and they come in just, with the strut, and they're not afraid of anything. Whereas that maybe the less experienced expert is going to come in a little bit more cautious. How do you deal with the person that's testified 100 times? They don't like attorneys, and they're kind of belligerent with you.
Well, if they come in, obviously my job, if I'm on the other side of the case from, from where they are is to make them less likable. So if they
Yeah.
come in and they're very arrogant like that, then I'm obviously going to capitalize on that. And really the more arrogant witness is like the perfect one for the I'm confused, because
Yeah.
then they're going to really talk down to you, and they're going to look, not nice. Also with the experienced experts, it really kind of hits them hard when you start to attack the finances and break down like what they've been paid for. So, I had one like last week that it really boiled down to he probably did 2 hours of actual work that wasn't really expert work, but he's got
Oh,
like a $10,000 bill, right?
yeah.
So, and he's been
Yeah.
doing this, and he's one of those, he's
Oops.
real shiny and polished. So I kind of went through his bills and I start to break down everything that he did on the case. And 90% of what he did wasn't even relevant to his opinions, right? He's just billing to do this stuff that's not necessary. So then I kind of, but you start out, you start out broad, just like anybody, any plaintiff's attorney reptiling a corporate rep. You start out
Yeah.
and this is what you did, and you spent this amount of time on records review, and you spent this amount of time on interviews, and but when you actually went and did your damages calculations, would that take you like 2 hours? And so then they don't really know what's happening, and you boil it down, and I actually went through like the source material where this guy got his damage calculations. I'm like, well, I could buy that, right? I own that. I bought it off Amazon for $169. So, what you really did on this case was you took these numbers out of a book, you put them on paper, and it took you a couple hours, and I could do that, right? And he actually admitted that I could do it. So it's like
Oh,
this
wow.
guy got paid $10,000 to
Jeez.
do something on a case that he admitted that I could have done with a book that I bought off of Amazon.
Well, that's very interesting. How
Yeah.
about the how okay, so some experts show up for testimony, and they've purposeful, which I think is better. I've had some expert witnesses on. I had one on earlier in the week who said, I like to be like, he's like, I can never be 50-50 plaintiff defense, but at any given moment it may be 60-40, right? And I try to do both because I want to be balanced. I want to be perceived as somebody that's not excessively leaning one way or the other. But that there's those, what I'm talking about. I won't use the word. But if you have somebody that's doing 90-10 or 100% plaintiff work, what's your tactic to expose that, and what's the typical, like, I'm dying to hear, like, I've read some depositions, but like some of the responses you get, because it's when they're doing 100% or 95% plaintiff work, I mean, you're gonna ask about it, and how do you attack that?
So in their discovery depositions, half the time I don't even ask them about it. But for like trial, because I know and I have their case list, for trial with those guys, I like to handle it a little bit differently, and I try to kind of mix it up every time,
Yeah.
because otherwise they're going to have an answer to whatever the question is, and they're going to have the ability to explain it in some way that makes sense to the jury. You also have to make sure that the way that you're doing it is a way that the jury will actually pick up on. So if you just blip by it and you're like, you do 95% plaintiff's work, and they say yes, that's really not going to resonate with the
Yeah.
jury. So what I'll do, because again, I deal with a pretty decent volume, and I'll be like, oh, hey, Dr. So-and-so, good to see you again. And then I'll actually go through and I'll be like, now, I saw you last week, didn't I? And wait, I actually saw you the week before that, right? And so I kind of, make it where it's like more obvious that they're not like a real professional that's just doing honest work, that they
Yeah.
really are kind of like a courtroom doctor. And so that's, rather than just being like, oh, you do 95% works. And I will also do the math on how many times they've testified for a particular firm. Like, it's like, have you
Yeah.
testified for
Yeah, it's
this
another
law
one.
firm 60 times in the last 3 years? Because that's a lot more than just, the big picture numbers. So I kind of try to draw it out a little bit and highlight more of the specifics. And it is funny when I'm like, oh yeah, I saw you last week. Good to see you again. And I'm gonna see you next week too, right? So 3 weeks in a row.
Now, here's the other thing. And I've seen this done before. I'm assuming you do it. Can you and do you, I guess, expose their annual income based on expert testimony, as opposed to not just, yeah, you testify a lot for the plaintiffs, but wow, you've made $300,000 this year to date or whatever, doing this to try to, again, because I think it does hurt credibility with jurors. When jurors see that and they see how much money, they're like, "Oh, I see what's going on here." Do you tend to draw that out as well?
Yes, and you again, you have to make sure that you do it in a way that's actually gonna
Yeah,
resonate with the jury and that's, like, within the rules of evidence, right?
yeah.
So, you can't really talk about someone's gross income and,
Mhm.
total, but you can talk about how much they make from a particular law firm. It's actually more
Oh,
challenging
wow.
for defense firms sometimes because they
Mm,
can get the data on, like, how much an insurance carrier pays them, and it can come in, and some of the defense experts make astronomical numbers too. But
sure.
again, so for but for an expert that I see a lot, I'll be like, "Now I saw you last week in trial and you were paid $15,000 on that case that you were here for last week. And then I'm seeing you again and this is another 15 and that's about average
Yeah.
and you do this many cases per year." So I'll kind of try to draw it out where it's like a math problem. And again, then the jury can really see, how much they're getting paid for expert
Wow.
witness work.
All right, so let's turn the tables. You're prepping one of your experts. Now, I assume there's some times where you hire an expert, they've testified before with a different attorney. Maybe they've learned some bad habits, or maybe you find someone phenomenal. And I do think that there's a benefit to having an expert that maybe doesn't have a lot of testimony experience to say, hey, this is not a professional witness, right? Um, Yet they're very green to the litigation system. Can you kind of go over it? You get an expert, and particularly ones for those maybe those newer ones or the ones that kind of come in with some baggage because they've made some mistakes. Maybe they weren't prepped very well by previous counsel. What are some of the things you go over with them to try to prevent bad things from happening, knowing what's going to happen to them? Because you know as well as I do, the last thing you want is your expert's credibility torpedoed. Can you maybe run down the checklist of things that you want to make sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's with your experts so they don't fall prey to some of these counterattacks.
Well, first, never assume that they know how to testify, even if they
Yeah,
sound really intelligent when you're talking to them about their opinions. Because I've
a
seen
great
it
point.
where they come off as like really confident. They're like, yes, you did nothing wrong, and this is why. And they give you these great opinions. Or even you might get like a compulsory medical examination report that reads well, and then the guy gets into his deposition and he just tanks it. So never assume that they know what they're doing even if they've been doing expert witness work for, years. Now, obviously, that'll like if I have personal experience with one before and I've seen them testify, I can start to gain confidence in them. But if it's a new
Yeah.
expert to me, then I will not make an assumption that they know what they're doing in terms of testimony. In terms of getting them ready for certain cross-examination tactics, I have given them transcripts from other trials where experts have tanked,
Oh, that's a good
just
idea.
and then sort of gone over it with them because certain plaintiffs' attorneys, I mean, they do like if they have like a shtick that works, they'll do it over and over again until it stops working, right?
Yeah.
So some attorneys, they have different cross examinations. Like there's one firm that with compulsory medical examination experts, they'll do like the isn't it a coincidence cross, and that's the ones that they come in. They're like, oh, I think this accident may have caused a sprain strain, but anything after 12 weeks is not related. But then the guy's gotten treatment, straight through with no gaps or anything. So then they'll be like, well, isn't it a coincidence? And he went to bed one night and he woke up and it was a new pain not related to the accident. And some of the experts, if they're not prepped for that, they don't know what to say. So I try to give them a transcript where one has really tanked. And we actually are like, okay, what did the expert say in the answer to this question? What do you think he should have said here? Because especially if they get caught in like a rapid fire situation where they're just saying yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Mhm.
then it's really bad. I always say it's kind of like watching Apollo Creed getting beaten to death by Dolph Lundgren, by the
You went
Russians. Like
Rocky on me?
you
Wow.
like want to stop it, but you can't. Yeah, you're like you should have thrown the towel. Um,
Yes.
but so you want to get ahead of it and tell them like this is going to happen. Let's practice it before it does happen.
Yeah, that was Rocky 4, by the way, I
Yeah,
believe.
that's to me that's the best Rocky, but.
I was, by the way, like, I think I was like in the 8th grade when that came out. And the rumor spread like, Apollo Creed gets killed by this big Russian guy. And like, then I watched it. I think I cried. I was like 12 years
I
old.
think everybody cried. If they say they didn't, they're lying.
It was really, really, it was really bad. It was a traumatic, it's my trauma in my life.
It like ranks up there with like the death of Goose and Top Gun.
Oh, another brutal, God, it's just, now I'm like all depressed here. I did,
Yeah,
we
and
started
like
off
a
ranting, then get the cross-examination. Now I'm just like in the somber, like, you
I mean,
know,
I might as well just bring up like Bambi's mom and
yeah,
Mufasa
I
from
mean, but
Lion King.
these are very, very tough. These are very, very tough. Well, thanks for coming. I think it's a really good topic. And I know that something that's very important to you is mentoring, young attorneys. And I know that you are probably constantly lecturing them and getting them experience in these areas, because this is, yeah, in every case, right? You're gonna deal with this stuff. It's being able to plot the appropriate attack, on the other expert, but then also, making sure those same attacks don't come back to bite your expert. But before we leave, since you were on the last time, a lot of changes, a lot of changes. So yeah, you're now at the Tyson Mendes firm, and everything's growing. And Bob and I keep in touch. Tell us just a little bit about how things going at the firm. How are things going? You're approaching your 1 year anniversary here in the Jacksonville office. Give us kind of the firm and personal update with that, because that's a big deal. I think it's a huge career move. I also think, and don't tell me it's not, I think it's stressful, right? Kind of starting in a new office and kind of going through how the process has been, and kind of where it started maybe in the first couple months, and where you're at now and how far you've come.
So yeah, so our 1 year anniversary is April 24th. We came over with 7 attorneys. We have 20 in Jacksonville now,
Wow.
and also within the year, we have our Fort Lauderdale office has grown as well. We kind of brought in a new team with Rob O'Malley, who's a friend of mine, and
Oh, good.
another excellent trial attorney. So Florida has really grown for Tyson and Mendez. The firm itself has been incredibly supportive. There's so many resources, and as far as defense firms go, this isn't one of the firms that's like, oh, we've always done it this way. So
Yeah.
I think that's why they're seeing so much growth, is because it's a firm that kind of like listens to new ideas. And one of the criticisms of defense firms that you always have is like they fail to change and
Yeah.
adapt. And here, our goal is to really kind of be the best trial firm that we can be. And so they're always giving us the resources to do that. So, and I think, between having extra resources, and then we got a little boost in our case count from tort reform, that's why we've really been able to grow into like a decent sized office in only 1 year.
That's tremendous. Well, congratulations on everything. And before you leave, let me tell you a final story. So I'm walking out of the gym yesterday, and somebody tried to reptile me. Okay. And this happens because, remember, reptile is really, I've been over this a million times, but there's a lot of sales tactics that are combined in reptile. And I see it coming. So I walk out, and there's like a van that has some writing on it. And now there's a table set up with like clipboards and a couple ladies walking around. So they're collecting money for some cause. I see that coming out. Now, very wisely, I always have my earbuds in the gym, because I listen to my podcast selection, or I'm blasting my Metallica or Foo Fighters. But I'm walking out to the car, always keep them in, because at this point in my life, I just really don't like people, and I don't want to talk to anybody. And I'm walking, and I see her out of the corner of my eye, and she waved to me, and I gave one of these, kept walking, kept walking, kept walking. But then she started walking towards me, and she's smiling, and and I'm like, oh man, like, how much of a dick do I really want to be here? Like, do I just give her the hand? I stiff arm her? I give her the Heisman and keep walking? Or do I let her down more gently? Because I know what's gonna she's gonna ask me for money. It's very, very clear. Writing's on the wall. I'm very advanced with a couple of funny stories from Wrigley Field on this, but regardless. So I take my earbuds out, and right to reptile. She comes right, and she goes, Isn't it really important that we as a community, we end world hunger? I swear. It's isn't safety the top priority? It's the same thing. And she wants me to say yes, and we're going down the chain. However, little does she know who she's talking to. She picked like the wrong person at LA Fitness to do this to. I looked right at her and I went, nope. And like the wheels came off. She had nowhere to go. She goes, no. I went, nah, nah. She goes, well, we're collecting money for, I go, well, good luck with your cause, you know? But I'm a very, you give a guy a fish for a day, right? You give a guy a fish, you feed him for a day, you
Right.
teach him how to fish. I'm one of those. So then I think I said something like, oh, yeah, if you were, you know, collecting money to buy agricultural equipment, that you're, hey, now maybe we'll talk. But just collecting money to buy, blah, 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 she just dropped me like a bad habit. Just boom. I'm not talking
Like
to her.
I support long-term solutions.
Long-term solutions, right? I brought that out, and boy, they wanted no part of me. It was off to the next person, and they reptiled everybody else that was coming out the door. So it's everywhere. It's
It's
everywhere.
kind of like when you get the sales call inevitably in Florida of like a realtor wanting to sell your house. Like, can I sell your house? And I'm like, no, can I sell yours?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And out here in Florida, you get all this random stuff. It's this brush fire season. You know that all too well up there, and here in Orlando. And yeah, I smell the smoke. You get some call. It's like, isn't it important to end brush fires? Isn't it important to do this? And they're like, everybody says yes, right? That's reptile edge 101. So you got to learn how to detect that and go, nah, not really. And then just
And then
watch
you
the
cut them
wheels
off
come
too.
off. The wheels come off. The wheels come
That's
off. All right.
funny.
Well, this was fantastic. You're always welcome on the podcast. Um, Tell everybody we said hi. I can't. I need to see your new office, so I can't wait to get up there. So thank you very much for coming on. To our audience, thank you so much for participating in this edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast, brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. See you.